Say, little playmate, won't you come play with me? Climb up my apple tree, slide down my rainbow into the cellar door, and we'll be jolly friends forevermore, more, evermore. Yes, I've gotten up and I'm in a good mood. And I've got friends to share coffee with this morning. How's everybody doing? Good morning, Mary Seidler. Good morning to KJ and the Rays. Looks like I'm on time today. TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday, right? Well, here in Tennessee, it's been raining. It's dark outside. I had to turn on one of the lights over here in the kitchen because when I looked, I was like, dang, the screen is looking like I'm sitting in the dark. So anyway, it is Friday and this week has flown by. I was catching Cresha K. Eason's live stream last night, and I think I'm going to have to agree that there might be some back and forth going on here between her and I. And I really, that does my heart good because in a lot of ways, what I do really has to do with, people looking at whatever I say, whether it's complete or not, and something, happening in terms of their line of thinking in order to find their way in whatever they're doing, right? Does that make sense? Huh? So anyway, good morning, Tina Reddington. You've been late for the date every time, Tina, but I love you. I understand. Vix Tex, Kathy Gregg, Stephanie Willow, Marilyn, Great Day Mom, Cindy Arnold, Beach Lady. Hello, ladies. I love the demographics on this channel. We've got all these beautiful older women, a few men, but for the most part, OKJ knows the demographics on here. We've got experience, we've got wisdom, and we've got friendship. And we have things that we talk about that perhaps we've been through, or I've said it to myself when I read some of the comments from time to time. I'm like, man, they're saying exactly what I've been thinking or feeling or this or that. It's just very wonderful to know that I am not alone in some of the ways that I think and feel. As many of y'all know, I had to throw out there a live stream yesterday. I don't think I explained it very well, but I was trying to. It was almost like, okay, these are all these thoughts of everything that I've researched and analyzed on this particular part of this case, but I just can't seem to put it all together in a pre-record, first of all, with nobody around. It was weird. It's the first time it's ever happened to me. It just seemed like what I wanted to say was on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't articulate it. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do a live stream. That's going to light a little fire under OKJ's ass there. And maybe it'll just, when it comes out, it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to really make sense. But I can go back and look at it and say, okay, this is what you were thinking and feeling, and you said it out loud. And, for me, to say something out loud doesn't mean that it's right or that I got it right. I am one of these type people that like to think before I speak. But when it comes to something like what we've been talking about, Chad's alibi, on specific dates and stuff, it was so hard for me. And I know I haven't yet, but I know I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, well, you thought this. Why did you think this? And why did you say this? Was it because you had this preconceived notion that you were going to believe anything that woman Melanie Gibb had to say, or David Warwick, or whatever? So it is a way for me to weed things out. And I was happy to hear Cresha say that when she heard the live stream yesterday, that a few things jiggled for her. And I will go so far as to say that if it was, I believe when she says, I watched it and everything, and she says that, I really believe that the track that she went on, going from what she was hearing, would have been something that would help her. Okay? Not help all of us, but just help her. So I hope I'm making sense, but if I'm not, that's okay. Good morning, Within Reason. Mr. Mark McGarry, good morning. Cindy Arnold, Julie Coe. This is just something that people will never understand. Normal people don't act that way. Right, Cindy Arnold. That's true, and everyone has expressed that how are we supposed to get in the mind of anyone, and really are we ever going to find factual answers to some of this stuff? And for me, it's like this, y'all. Knock and the door shall be open, seek and ye shall find. It's as simple as that for me. Now, does that mean I'm going to find all the answers? No. But when it talks about knock and the door shall open, that means that I'm going to go down a way to see if I can find the answer, and seek and ye shall find. And seek meaning I could find the answers, or I could find that I don't find the answers, and that's an answer in and of itself. Which brings me to the closure aspect of it all. Closure, I don't think anyone can have closure if they know in their heart of hearts that they didn't do everything that they could have done in terms of research and analysis. And so that's just me. It might be different for you, but it is exactly what we've all, I'm sure, asked ourselves at some point. Why do we keep looking? Why do I keep looking? I can only speak for myself. Because something's urging me to do that, and I don't believe that it's an urge that is unhealthy. I believe it's something that motivates me, that makes me enthusiastic to find answers if I can. Fancy Nancy says, the Rays have brought out so many details I never even thought of. Jenny kept saying, that's right, before you did. It was like an echo. Y'all are so knowledgeable. And every one of you are. And it has always been seeking justice through understanding. For me anyway, I for whatever reason you're here, there's no right or wrong answer. Good morning, Daisy Sushine. It's hard to say that. It's a tongue twister. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, then where's the peck of pickled peppers that Peter Piper picked? I can do the tongue twisters, but when it comes to you, Daisy Sushine, it just doesn't fall off this old country girl's tongue. Good morning, Denise Gray. So I was listening last night to Kresha, and she brought up something that perhaps, and I know, that I've kind of let sit on a back burner for a pretty good while. She brought up that I had said that Ian was the key. And many of y'all that's been around for a long time, I kept hammering it. Did I ever, since Lori's trial, even talk about Ian Pawlowski and his testimony? And what in the heck, at that point, could OKJ say, see, Ian is the key? I wanted to know if what I had felt deep in my gut, because it can too be about a gut feeling. Y'all, it's my experience and in my view that sometimes, a lot of times really, the gut feeling is right on. It isn't about, we've got to just nail down this fact in order for us to feel good about it. A gut feeling says so much when you get that gut feeling from facts. Does that make sense? I've said it for 3 or 4 times. Now I'm starting to sound like Melanie again. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? But anyway, so Ian Pawlowski being the key. And that kind of just threw me a little bit. And I was like, Kresha's bringing it up. And did we ever really talk about that? And I thought, well, let me go and look at all my notes, from where we watched Lori's trial. And obviously, the only notes that I could take initially was from Nate Eaton's tweets and Justin Lum's tweets. And then, of course, later on, I had listened to Ian Pawlowski testify. And now that I'm sitting here in front of you, was Ian the key? Is Ian the key in all of this? And I thought, okay, what was his testimony? Well, his testimony on direct examination was he never saw the kids. Now, I'm breaking this down. This isn't exactly word for word. This is what I got out of it. He was asked about, well, when you went into Lori's apartment, did you see any signs of the kids? He says, yes, he saw backpacks and luggage that was, like for kids. But then he went on to say, yes, he saw the bedrooms, the children's bedrooms, and there was nothing in it to let him believe that the kids were in those bedrooms. And I thought, well, what can I get out of that? And I'm like, well, Melanie Pawlowski was with him. Melanie Pawlowski was with him when he saw the luggage, and he saw that the bedrooms didn't have anything with the children in it. And Melanie Pawlowski wants to act like, I didn't know Tylee was off with friends and JJ had special schools. Give me a break, y'all. It wasn't about what Ian said. It was the fact that Melanie Pawlowski was right there with him when they went into Lori's apartment. So he's asked, were you open to listening? Okay, to what Lori and Chad had to say. He said yes, and he went on to explain that his belief and his religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's a living, breathing thing, right? And that it's constantly growing in terms of knowledge and stuff. So he felt like he needed to stay open to that because of what? Because of personal revelation. I'll leave that to Cresha. I'm sure she can attach that to the stupidity of what these people were believing and all of that. So then he goes on to say on direct examination, he says, after just a few days, he realized that he could not embrace any of this. And his reasoning for that was because he didn't like this possession of people. He goes on to talk about, I couldn't believe in that. I couldn't believe in this ranking system of light and dark. And of course, it was brought out on direct examination. And what the state wanted him to basically let the jury know was a lot of this had to do with, the law enforcement and how all the law enforcement was dark and all this and that. And he couldn't wrap it around his head and believe that, you can go from light to dark to light. He felt like that was something that's firmly established and all of that. He goes on to talk about the day after his marriage with Melanie Pawlowski, which is November the 30th was his marriage. So the day after that, he realized that this was scaring him, upsetting him. Y'all remember his little story about his daughter and child, his two children were with him, and that he couldn't find his daughter, and she was hiding behind the curtain, and it just freaked him out because he had heard the night before on their wedding night that all this stuff that really bothered him and scared him and upset him. And so when his daughter, he couldn't find her briefly, it scared him to death and all that. And then he also talked about he was learning about Brandon Boudreaux, and Melanie Pawlowski unloaded on him and told him these things, and it just really worried him. And he goes on to talk about how he went to law enforcement. So does that mean anything that I just shared with you proves that Ian Pawlowski is the key? Does it? Well, no, it's just the details of his direct examination. But I'll tell you where Ian Pawlowski is the key. Does anybody remember when the state was done questioning him, Thomas stood up and said, well, now that the state has brought out these secret recordings that Ian was going to do for police, we want to hear them. Did any of us get to hear them? No. And I haven't gotten any satisfactory answer to that because the state of Idaho's prosecuting team opened that door. And they should have been able to hear those recordings. We all were very disappointed. We wanted to hear it. Obviously, the state on their direct said, did you hear Lori or Chad say anything that was criminal? And he said no. But she did ask him, was these recordings about their beliefs and stuff that we've been talking about? And he said yes. And maybe the state got their way because the state was like, well, these are just them talking about their religious beliefs. Well, folks, let me just get down to the nitty gritty. Whatever Lori and Chad said in those recordings, even if it was something, belief system or whatever, it is relevant. It is relevant not only in a court of law because the state opened the door, but there are people, mostly the victims' family members, there are a lot of us, we want those answers because something that could have been said by Lori and Chad in those recordings could shed a light on a lot of things that a lot of people, they look at things, oh, they said this, and then they move on. Well, for OKJ, when someone like these crazy ass people say something, it could lead to another thing going down the road. It could be something very important. So the state did not have to play those recordings. And then that got my mind thinking, and I'm like, okay, well, we've all been talking about John Pryor and how he got a front row seat to Lori's trial so that John Pryor could get ready for Chad Daybell's trial. Well, wonder what John Pryor thought in that moment. He obviously would have had to say, well, the state doesn't want that being played for the jury. This is Lori's trial, so this really, the state didn't want to hear anyone to hear it. So that means that this wouldn't have hurt Lori. Perhaps it could have hurt Chad. Maybe it could have showed in the recording that Chad was the one that was feeding Lori all this stuff, and the state didn't want the jury to hear that because it would make Lori look like a victim, right? And then I thought, well, okay, there is no other explanation, y'all. There's no other explanation why the state did not want that recording, those recordings that Ian done for the FBI, other than to say it would have made Lori look less guilty or make Lori look like a victim. Because if those recordings showed Lori was the one and she was, she wasn't talking criminal and saying anything that would have got her put in jail, but it showed a pattern that Lori was in charge or something like that, you damn know it, I know it, that they would have played it. But the state did not want it played. And maybe from there, the state knew that whatever was said in those recordings, that opens doors to other things as well. You see, because in a court of law, if you open that door, either way, state or defense, those things can be, it's almost like branches. Something starts out, the door was opened, things were talked about, 5 or 6, just we're giving an example. Well, they could go up number 4 or number 1 on any of that in terms of whatever the testimony is. Then I said to myself, okay, Ian the key. Well, if Ian was the key, because there are recordings here that we're not going to get to hear, so how can I prove that Ian is the key? Well, I guess the question has to be asked. Would Ian Pawlowski testify in Chad's trial? And has the state got a front row seat to their mistake that they barely got by with on the recordings? Because ultimately, y'all, if the state goes and puts Ian on the stand in Chad Daybell's trial, if they say nothing this time around about Ian Pawlowski doing secret recordings for the FBI, guess what? The defense doesn't have a chance to have them played. Or, how about this, y'all? The state puts Ian Pawlowski on the stand. They do talk about the recordings. And the reason they do talk about the recordings, knowing that the defense could ask to have them played in the court, or the state themselves could play it, because of what? It's Chad Daybell's turn. And in this recording, Chad Daybell looks bad. They didn't want that recording in Lori's trial because if Chad Daybell looked bad, it would make Lori look like a victim. So they did not want to play it. But in Chad's trial, there's a very good possibility, y'all, that the state could play those recordings because it's going to look like Chad was the stupid ass serial killer cult asshole, you know? So in the case of Ian Pawlowski being the key, I still believe that. There is this opportunity. I don't believe that the state is going to bring up the recordings in their case in chief at Chad Daybell's trial if it's going to make Chad look good. Again, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there is a transcript of Lori's trial, and that was brought up in Lori's trial. I guess the question is it evidence Lori's transcript? Because if it is, John Pryor, that could be something that he brings up in his defense of Chad, that Lori was the bad guy or whatever. Do y'all see where I'm going with that? Cindy Arnold, yeah, they might bring the recordings into Chad's trial, or they might not. The question is if the state said, "Oh crap, we got through Lori's trial, she got convicted. We had a little boo-boo there where we didn't want those recordings played. We've learned our lesson. When we present our case in chief, we will say nothing of this," and perhaps even they might not even put Ian on the stand. It goes back to what I said, the whole reasoning behind his testimony in the first place. I mean, what kind of light was really shed on any of that from Ian Pawlowski's testimony in Lori's trial that made Lori look guilty? Because it was mostly about, he decided he wasn't going to believe in any of that, and the state stepped in a pile of shit basically by bringing up, well, you went to police and did the recordings. I mean, if for any way at all that recording made Lori look bad, then why? Then why would Thomas want to play it? And yes, Thomas and Archie had heard the recordings. So I'm not holding out, I'm not sitting here saying that that's exactly what's going to happen, that it'll get played. There's a possibility it could get played. But I do hold on to this about Ian Pawlowski being the key. I just do. What if the recording is not played and we never know? I still believe that. So let's move forward. I told y'all on the last live stream that we were going to go back a little bit because I felt like it was kind of attached to what we've been talking about in terms of Chad's alibi. Obviously, this is the text messages. I still, right at this moment, believe the only real neutral evidence of the 22nd and 23rd can only be gleaned from Alex and Lori's text messages back to one another at this point. Maybe it'll come out in Chad's trial where he was. Okay? And again, those are theories and hypotheses for me, but I don't know about you, I cannot rely on Melanie Gibb and David Warwick on any of that. And looking at everything all the way back up to Lori's trial, it was the only thing that I saw neutral that I could try to build my theories on. And so, because case is complex last night on It's a Crime, Linda had an update. The list of witnesses has to be turned in 2 days prior to the trial. She had a lot of info, may want to check it out. Okay, Mary Seidler, and a lot of people look in different places for whatever they're going to, get their information from. Diane White says, how you like your coffee? Mine is black. I like my coffee in the morning. No creamers, 1 teaspoon of sugar. That's all I take in the morning. Now in the evening time, I might put a little kitty coffee together. I like caramel macchiato. But in terms of anything else, if I go out somewhere and they have espresso or, something with a lot of marshmallowy, creamy stuff, I'll do that. I don't like iced coffee either. But I do like coffee candy. The hard candy, the coffee candy, I like that. Tina says, my coffee is still being made. Eric Jasper says, I like my creamer with a tad of coffee. Kitty coffee. So I want to go back to August 10th of 2019. And this was brought out in Lori's trial. And it's almost like every time I'm looking at something, whether it's testimony or facts or whatever, it's almost like you can't go and do the same analytical approach to voicing it for me. It's always something different. Or at least, maybe there's a pattern there. Maybe I do this, and then I go back to this. But it's the way I ingest and deal with what I'm looking at and how I'm able to express it. Do you think Ian's recordings incriminated the other co-conspirators and they didn't want to go down that road so they could get them to testify? That's a good possibility, Rachel Black. But, Lindsay Blake did ask Ian, is there anything on those recordings that Chad and Lori said that would incriminate them? And he says no. She should have asked that question, huh? Shouldn't she have said, is there anything on those recordings from anyone? Because it would have had to have been Lori, Chad, and who else? Melanie Pulaski and perhaps Alex Cox. Maybe Melanie Gibb was there at some of the recordings. All I know is that Ian said that him and Melanie Pulaski was around Chad and Lori for those, during all that. Whether there were phone conversations, he was recording what Melanie Pulaski was saying on the phone with Lori and Chad. When you say August 2019, Tammy was still alive, I thought you were saying during the time of Ian. No, it was in November with Ian and them. Tammy was already gone. Again, let me just emphasize this on his testimony. He's saying that he's gone to Lori's, and yet when he goes to anywhere, he's with Melanie Pulaski. And so for her to come out on national TV, two interviews, one with East Idaho News and another one there, I forgot what it was, and saying that, Tylee was off with her friends, she was going to BYU, and JJ was in special schools. The special schools especially, y'all, doesn't make a damn bit of sense. What? He has to go to school every day, and she doesn't see him during the day, and she never, in the end of the day there, where people go home from school, she never went to her Aunt Lori's house. Give me a break, y'all. There was no answer she could give other than that. Eric says, I bet there are a lot more in those recordings. There has to be. But what it really comes down to, Eric, is that there is absolutely a reason why the state's prosecuting team did not want those recordings played. And it can only be one of two things. Number one, it was going to make Lori look like a victim. Or number two, it was going to open doors for the defense on other areas and other people. So when you talk about who was it? Rachel Black, when you talk about it could have implicated other people, maybe not on the recording, but through what? Opening a door of what was said on the recordings down that path could have basically been a red herring, the shiny object that would have knocked the jury off balance. Who knows? In my opinion, unless direct speech from Chad on those recordings, I don't think they will use the recordings from Ian. It was giving the FBI and law enforcement clear picture of the cult they were dealing with. Okay, well, that makes sense. But then again, you've got to ask the question, what was going on in a juror's mind at Lori's trial when they just decided, because, Thomas got up and said, that is part of our defense's case. Go back and listen to it, y'all. That we hear those recordings and then they don't get heard. And the juror's like, well, why ain't we hearing the recordings? Right? Marilyn says, Ian's ex found info on their computer. She clued Ian in because she was scared for the children. That's right, Marilyn. You're correct. Eric Jasper, when you say where I live, a parent cannot take their child out of school. You got 7 days, and they either start calling or come looking for the child. You can only put in for transfer that school handles. Well, the reason Lori, obviously, we all figured this out. It's very simple, common sense. She enrolled JJ for 2 reasons. The first important one is she had to keep those benefits flowing, and you've got to meet requirements. And number 2, she probably just needed a babysitter for a couple of days, before she ripped him out. I don't know how that works in Idaho, but, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are a lot of homeschooled kids in Idaho. Fancy Nancy says, in Texas, you can take them out and say you are homeschooling. So anyway, let's get back to this, because I'm going to try to weave this together in terms of Chad's alibi, in the fact that during August 10th of 2019, Chad and Lori, this came out in Lori's trial, were talking via text. And this is where they first start talking about getting rid of the kids. Now, on the text messages they are. We know that, February, March, April they were doing all these castings. I do not believe for 1 second that Melanie Gibb or David Warwick, when they say that Tylee wasn't brought into this casting stuff, I don't believe it. I believe they were, after Charles's murder, they started homing in on Brandon Boudreaux and the children. But August 10th, and this was according to that FBI Hart guy, the couple, Lori and Chad, discussed a plan to take the children. And this threw me for a loop when I heard it, because we'd never heard it before. Lori says, please check JJ. He just woke up saying crazy stuff and won't go back to sleep. He is talking to Blake. It's weird. And I don't know. I think Blake could be Melanie Pulaski's son. And I thought, okay, Lori has texted Chad. She's reached out to Chad. So you have to believe that she was reaching out to Chad before on anything else for that matter. She's reaching out and says, please check JJ. And he won't go back to sleep. And from my view, if you put their bullshit aside, their role-playing, getting off on being, elite and powerful and all of this stuff and believing they had special powers, this is just common sense. JJ has woke up and he won't go back to sleep. And she's aggravated about it. And so she goes to Chad. and she wants him to check JJ. In other words, she should have been saying, JJ's woke up. I'm aggravated. I want you to know, Chad, this is so aggravating to me that JJ's woke up and is talking weird and all that. And from what we understand in terms of his autism, he could have been saying anything. I think, it doesn't mean that he was talking weird. She just wanted Chad to believe that something's wrong with JJ, and she doesn't want to deal with it alone, which, in fact, nothing was wrong with JJ, in my opinion. It's just something JJ did from time to time, and it's aggravating the shit out of her. And Chad Daybell says, JJ is still JJ. I am told his spirit recognizes Blake as evil and is unsettled by him. So when Chad reads Lori's text, on a basic level, he's trying to ease her. He's trying to make her feel better because obviously she's come to him about JJ and she's exacerbated and all this. So he wants to calm her down and say JJ is still JJ. And then he wants to give her an explanation because she's saying he's talking weird. Well, Chad's not going to say, hey, maybe he's not talking weird. It's okay. He's going to, whatever Lori says, he's going to back that up by letting her know with his feedback that whatever she says, he's going to go along with it. And so he's given her an explanation that the reason that JJ is talking weird, which I don't believe he was, but just going along this, that, hey, Lori, he's talking weird because he sees Blaze as evil, and that's why he won't go back to sleep, and that's why he's talking weird. And he's unsettled, Lori, because of this. So he's trying in that text back to give her an explanation to her bullshit, but at the same time, he's trying to keep her calm and giving her explanations. But then he says, a little whiles after that, he says, hey, my love, how is JJ now? Like Chad Daybell gives a shit how JJ is. But in this case, he's probably trying to make her believe that he actually cares about JJ. Lori says, he's better. He was just up talking nonsense for like 2 hours last night. So this is the next day. I'm sure they were bugging him. Is he at 0 yet? I miss you. So what I get out of that is she's giving him back an explanation why she thought he was weird and all of this and that. Then she goes on to say for 2 hours and that I'm sure they were bugging him. No, nobody was bugging JJ. JJ was bugging Lori for 2 hours because he wouldn't go to sleep. That's what that was. That's just my opinion. She was bugged. She didn't like it, but she wants to put that off on these invisible bullshit spirits, whether it's a good Blake, a bad Blake, whatever. She's letting Chad know he's better now. Why couldn't she have said, JJ's worse? He's worse. The reason she doesn't say that and says he's better is because Chad has talked to her and she thinks that Chad is trying to help her with JJ. Then Chad says, and then of course she says, is he at 0 yet? Well, common sense says they've already in the past talked about this rating thing. She wouldn't have just brought up, is he at 0 yet? And Chad's like, what are you talking about, 0? No, they already know this stuff. Chad's already rated JJ. And JJ was supposed to be light at this time and all of that. But Chad says, yes, he's at 0. So what does that mean? Does that mean JJ's spirit has left his body and this evil zombie's in there now? He probably was partly through the veil talking to people both light and dark. He's talking about the night before when JJ was up, according to Lori, acting weird, talking to Blake. So Chad wants Lori to think during that 2 hours, it all started. His He was partially through the veil and he was still a little bit there, but now it's the next day and he's at 0. He's done left his body. Okay, that's what that was. According to the available information on how these creepy ass people saw things. And then Lori says, maybe he was talking to the real Blake. And why would she say that? And we'll go down further and you'll understand a little bit more. Well, Chad's just let her know that he's at 0. In other words, he's not there anymore. So Lori wants to feel better, or at least give that impression to Chad, that maybe he was talking to Blake. Maybe that's, maybe he was talking to the real Blake, which the real Blake down through here is supposed to be good, right? So she's trying to ease herself into this thing where he's done told her. He might as well have said, JJ is 0, he's dead, he's not there anymore, but she knew what that was. So now she wants to put a little nicety on it. She wants to put a little nicety. And then Chad says, yes, that was the real Blake. So now here she brings up something that will make it feel a little bit better to her. Although I'll have to say she's so damn psychopathic and narcissistic. How the hell could she ease her own freaking conscience when she didn't have a conscience? But he's affirming to her, yes, he might as well have been saying, hey, Lori, you're right. You want to feel better about this. And so I'm going to confirm it to you. Yes, that was the real Blake. And then Lori says, do you think there is a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children? Let me take this step by step. So she already knows JJ's at 0, so he's not really there anymore. So this evil entity is in there. It's interesting, is it not, that Melanie Gibbs says, well, she brought that up when I came to visit, and that was the first time that it had been talked about. No, in August there, y'all, he'd already been possessed according to these text messages right here. Do you think there's a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children? In other words, okay, JJ's not there anymore. Tylee's not there anymore. These are evil entities inside of them. So we've got to figure out how to, orchestrate getting rid of these bodies, because the real JJ and the real Tylee are gone. So we can't allow that. It's our mission to get rid of zombies, which is a crock. We just have to wait for it to be carried out, says Lori. I feel lost, like I should be doing something to help. Well, didn't this woman tell Melanie Gibb at her in-home meeting that she'd been the warrior beyond the millennia and she'd fought the forces of evil all this time? And by the time August rolls around, Chad and her both are full steam into this crazy-ass role-playing crap. What? She's lost? Lost about what? How to get rid of the physical bodies of her children? It's interesting, is it not? She takes JJ September 14th to Bear World there. Oh, she wants to make sure the evil entity has a good time at Bear World. Don't you know? Chad says, there is a plan being orchestrated for the children. I was shown last night how it fit together, but it has been taken from my mind, of course. Well, maybe he had explained to her before, because he says, of course. So that leads me to think that he had explained to her, before this text, that, what, these things, they come to me beyond the veil, but because I'm in this earthly body and mind, sometimes it leaves quickly, or something to that effect. And this orchestration, there is a plan being orchestrated. Who's planning? Because in August, Alex is not yet in Rexburg hanging out with old Chatty Boy. So it's Chad who's saying, yes, first you got to get over the hump that the damn hussy there is wanting to orchestrate a plan to get rid of these bodies of her children. Then from there, Chad confirms it. Lori says, what should I be doing? What should I be doing? And what could she do? In the month of August, what could she be doing she's asking Chad, what should I be doing? Does that mean she doesn't have a clue? That she just feels lost? Or does she have ideas? But she just wants to hear it from Chad, because if she brought up the idea, would Chad disagree with that and say, no, Lori, it's this orchestrated plan, not the one you're talking to me about? She doesn't want to be the one to say that. She wants to seem a little bit subservient to Chad. She wants to put this off on Chad, dumbass Daybell. And Chad says, you're doing everything right, my love. Okay, what? She's doing everything right. Was she doing everything right when her and Alex murdered Charles Vallow? Was she doing everything right in the month of August leading up to their departure into Idaho? Well, according to Chad, he says, the Lord told me she is right on track. And I thought, does he mean that he's saying, the Lord told me Lori, is right on track? Or is he saying, the Lord told me she, being Tylee, is right on track? Right on track on what? Couldn't have been Tylee, because right on track makes one believe that something is good going on. Right on track. So it makes me believe that Chad is telling Lori, the Lord said she, that means you, Lori, are right on track. You're doing everything right, Lori. He said, and he's talking about the Lord, which is a crock of shit, to just keep resolving the telestial issues so you are unencumbered and fully free. And that says to me that in the month of August, Lori has to tie up loose ends. Lori's got to get whatever money she can together. She's got to start making plans to go to Idaho, and everything's tied to those children's benefits. She's got to resolve all those issues. And ultimately, we know in August, what happens? The Chase Morgan account there, she turns he's wanting her to get all her shit together in terms of the money aspect, the worldly things and all that. That was going to be an issue, wouldn't it? Lori was going to have to let Tylee know, you're not in control of your own money anymore. I'm taking control of it. Lori says that actually feels good that JJ was talking to the real Blake. So it feels good to the mother of that beautiful little boy that, number one, JJ is gone, that he's off with Blake, the good Blake there, and it feels so good. If I was a mother and I believed this crazy ass shit and my child's spirit was gone, I would be devastated if I believed that, which I don't. But no, it feels so good to Lori. I'm sure she got real juicy about it. I'm sure that when Chad told her that JJ was at 0, in her mind, oh, thank goodness. I'm not going to have to deal with these 2 hours of him waking up, or he won't go to sleep. He's talking like an autistic child would talk. I've had it. All I'm thinking about is that tiny little itty bitty gherkin and our beautiful adventure together. Getting close, I sensed he was barely attached to his body. So when Chad Daybell says earlier in the text, he was partly through the veil and not, what is she doing? She's telling Chad Daybell, I sensed it. I sensed what you said. She's letting Chad know, you know what? I sensed it too. And what does Chad say? Knowing that Lori is affirming what he told her earlier about partly through the veil and not. And Lori says, barely attached to his body. Chad says, you're so incredible in many ways. Your mission has barely begun. He's letting her know, y'all. He's letting her know, wow, you get it. You're believing me. You're believing me in my crock of shit. You're letting me know that you're affirming me. You're going along with what I'm saying, Lori. And then Lori says, as long as it ends with you, it's all good. If it all ends with Chad, to Lori, where is it that as long as it ends with my children going on to their next probation or they're in heaven and all that, No, it was always about, as long as I'm with you, it's all good. Oh, it's all good that Chad and Lori both are sitting here in text messages talking about JJ's not there anymore, Tylee's not there anymore. Well, actually, in these text messages, do they even bring up Tylee at all? It's my opinion when he talks about the telestial issues. I think that has to do with Tylee's money, but they don't talk about Tylee in this. All they're speaking of is JJ. And why is that important? Because Tylee was the one that got murdered first before JJ. So at this moment, they're already confirming JJ is gone. There's an evil spirit, a zombie in him. But they say nothing about Tylee in this text exchange. And then Chad says, yes, yes, cheek to cheek, loin to loin. It isn't very far away, my love. And, you know, this cheek to cheek, you get this thing where she's laying her cheek on his cheek. Oh, we're so happy together. We can actually talk about cheek to cheek together. And my child is gone. Give me a break. Lori Vallow says, wish I could see you and be cheek to cheek. That right there tells me that Lori is not thinking about the sex. She's thinking about cheek to cheek. Why wouldn't she have said, wish I could see you and be cheek to cheek and loin to loin? She just wants to talk about being close to Chad. She don't want to talk about the loin bumping up against the other loin, grinding up against the other loin. And then Chad says, I seriously cannot stop crying. I was allowed to feel my own emotions that I will experience as you sing to them. Could y'all imagine a grown man crying? I don't believe so. I think he got passionate in that moment of talking about loin to loin and cheek to cheek with her. And when she said cheek to cheek and she didn't say anything else about loin to loin, it just made him cry because she was playing hard to get, don't you know? He started crying. He wants to be with the damn black hole. He wants to strap the damn 2x4 on and jump feet first into that nasty ass black hole. I was allowed to feel my own emotions. What? He told her in the past, I can't feel emotions unless, you know, I guess lowercase g God, because I won't say God. Lowercase g won't let me feel those emotions. Well, maybe that was him telling her that in the past because he didn't know how to. He's psychopathic. He's a serial killer. Wasn't it Melanie Gibb and Nate Eaton's East Idaho News Extravaganza? Say Chad was just so quiet. Lori did all the talking. You know, he just seemed a little insecure and not sure of himself. Well, maybe that was his reason. Maybe Lori might have said something to him about, you know, why are you so quiet? Or why are you so unassuming? And he might have said, well, God, he won't let me feel those emotions and things of that sort. Then this whole thing about I was allowed to feel my own emotions. I will experience as you sing to them. Sing to who? Sing to them. The children? I thought the children are already, their spirits have left their bodies. Well, why is she needing to sing to anybody? Because we know Lori loved to dance. There was testimony in Lori's trial that there was some singing that went on here and there. Give me a break. Then he says, I will experience as you sing to them, and the love, admiration, and reverence I have for you is indescribable. Everything we do is going to be spectacular. Well, he might as well have said, not the love and admiration and reverence, but all the horny feelings that Chad Daybell had for Lori. And the reason it would be indescribable is because he's never been this horny in his life. And everything we do is going to be spectacular. Make no mistake. He's already got visions, not real visions, not divine visions, of what he's going to do to the hooker. Okay? That's what he's talking about. But he has to dress it up and make it seem so reverent and so beautiful and moral and ethical and all that. Ain't nothing damn ethical about it. Then Lori says, I can't wait. Literally can't wait. I have no patience. I want you now. Y'all, how can you see that any other way that Lori's saying, I can't wait. I want to have sex with you, because she knows that's what turns Chad Daybell on and gets his bullshit fiction writing crap going so that they can continue to be engulfed in this lie, basically. And Chad says, I'm certainly your biggest fan. I love you, Lily. Hold on, sweet angel. We're close to the finish line, and this is August of 2019. He's letting Lori know she's everything that he could possibly want. What kind of man? What kind of man would want a woman who's talking about between each other being gone out of these bodies, that their bodies are possessed? Is that something to get juicy about? Is that something to get aroused about? It's scary. It's absolutely scary. And then Lori says, when he talks about we're almost to the finish line, Lori says, I'm trying. And Chad says, we'll make it. Then sometime after that, Chad tells Lori, I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary, so I will. So there you have it. Think about it all the way from the beginning of this text string. Lori brings up JJ. They talk about JJ through it all. There's no speaking about Tylee there. Now they're getting to Tylee. There's no text message in here where Lori says, Tylee is just being so mean about everything. She won't watch JJ, or Tylee is all mad at me, or anything like that. Chad brings it to Lori's attention. He instigates that something or someone has instructed him. Make no mistake, y'all. That's evil. That's evil. Could it have been Satan? Sure. Or it could have been Chad Daybell's own self-will. His own evil, diabolical self-will that brings up Tylee. Then Chad says, she is at 0.13. I turned up the pain to 10 and placed a spiritual virus in her. Let me stop there for a minute. So I guess one would have to believe Tylee's gone. There's no speaking of Tylee like she was with JJ, going, seeing Blake, the good Blake and all that. But I guess you'd have to assume that they both have embraced this bullshit about Tylee's not there anymore. And how are they going to get rid of this evil entity or darkness or what, zombie, whatever it is? So he's letting Lori know he's working on Tylee, that he has placed a spiritual virus in her, and he's turned up the pain to 10 to get her out, get this entity out of Tylee's body, with, I'm assuming, the thought that once the evil entity leaves, that Tylee will die. That the body will die and Tylee's body won't be used anymore for this demon to go around and do bad things to people. Or to keep them from their divine mission, whatever. And then Chad, after bringing up Tylee, says he, talking about JJ, is at 99.99. Now, this is after he says that JJ is at 0. So I might be confused about it, but maybe, is this negative 0.99? Because this was after saying that JJ was 0. So none of this shit makes sense anyway, but I'm just trying, for the sake of argument, figure it out. So then, maybe 0 meant JJ left the body, and now that this evil entity is in there, we start over with percentages or whatever of the scale there. Maybe that's what that means. And then Chad says Raphael visited him, and I'm going to say this like what he really meant. Because remember, Chad was Raphael. Raphael visited, or Chad visited JJ and told him to follow Amy, and I believe Amy must be Tylee, right? Into the light. I was assured I also assured JJ that James, which is Chad, so I also assured JJ that I would love and take care of his mommy, which he will with all of his heart and soul. So that is that. So again, Chad is trying to ease Lori. I don't know why, because she's the one that's bringing up JJ. She's the one that started talking about orchestration of a plan. It wasn't Chad that came to Lori and say, Lori, I'm seeking some kind of vision on, whether, there is a actual divine plan here that we need to follow or any. No, it was Lori bringing it up. Lori brought it up. Eric says, well, that certainly contradicts Lolo's pathetic, disgusting speech at her sentencing. Yeah, lay that up. Lay that up to what I just read you, to Lori's sentencing. Great point, Eric. Fancy Nancy says, maybe Chud was poor at math. Well, I'll tell you this, Fancy Nancy, he was poor. He was a shit poor writer. Hello, Mikhail Callahan. Eric says, and that's a man of God? Hello, X-Files. You're on a roll, Eric. Mary Seidler says, all I can say is gross. I'm sorry. Y'all know how I am. It just comes out that way. I apologize to anyone that's offended. But then again, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. And, let's just get real. Okay, Jay, I need help. I need help with how I communicate. Graded at ground zero does mean to rid Jada. Yes, that's why it's just interesting, because in the month of August, and this text stream started on August 10th, but it goes on through the month of August. And y'all remember, we really didn't know, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago, before it really started to come out, because y'all know, obviously, Melanie Gibb and David Warwick and any of the other one of them wasn't going to tell us the truth about, because that question was out there. When did they start talking about JJ and Tylee being zombies and dead and stuff? Well, at least, according to Lori's trial, this information and evidence come out, they were talking about it in August. And if they could talk about this stuff right here, and Melanie Gibbs says, I knew pretty much when Lori would learn something from Chad, she would share it with us. Or Melanie Gibbs, I didn't, maybe Brandon in her police interview, maybe Brandon was talked about in those castings. Well, those castings were over and done with by August. So, nobody else was, unless it was the immediate cult there, was talking about casting anything out. And I guess the question is during those castings, even as far back as Charles, Ned Schneider, Garrett, Hiplos, was it their understanding that if you got that evil spirit out there, because Charles is not there anymore, that the body would just fall down and die? Because that was never fleshed out, even though Hermosillo and Detective Ball there was in that last interview with Melanie Gibb. They asked the questions, but she always sidestepped shit. She always did. Oh, you're welcome, Denise Gray. Donna Donald says, every person who watched Nate's first interview knew What happened to zombies 15 minutes into it? How dumb is she? Well, I'll tell you what, Donna, that's interesting that we would bring that up, because I actually did go back and listen to Melanie Gibbs' East Idaho News Extravaganza for the millionth time this time, because I was like, well, we've been through Lori's trial, and y'all, I challenge you to go back. I know you think, oh, that's beating a dead horse. Go back. You would be surprised how you can actually, watching it now, really, really know who Melanie Gibb really is. That woman is a danger to society. That woman needs to be in jail. That woman is scary. That woman wants to feign ignorance and that she's one slice of bread short of love. No, in her mind and in her dealings, she is just diabolically evil, in my view. Eric, when you say, is there anything by way of proof that the LDS Church is rating people like that? Well, all we've heard, we've been slammed over and over again, that even in Ian's testimony in Lori's trial, he said none of that was anything that he'd learned in the church. But he was going to stay open, because the church is always open to new things. That's the danger there. If Melanie Gibb wants to say on Nate Eaton's East Idaho News that God is the first, the last, that he's never changing, then maybe she should look at her own words. Because it seems to me that if you're going to say personal revelation can change, I'm probably going to have to get off here, y'all. Something's going on with the Wi-Fi. But we'll talk about it again over the weekend. Look out for a live stream. KJ's going to get back with y'all. And guess what? I'll give you a hint. You ready? Mr. Wayne and I are coming to talk with the race. I think you'll enjoy it. Have a great weekend, everyone. Leave your comments and keep on looking.